What's up, you guys? Corey Hankerson here from Legacy Tax and Financial Planning, author of End the Tax Nightmare, Insider Secrets to Beat the IRS and Reduce Your Tax Debt. All right, guys, today we're going to be talking about those EIDL loans, those $10,000 grants that everyone is supposed to be getting within 3 days. And we're going to talk about why you're not getting it in 3 days and exactly what's going on here with this process and what you can do about it. All right. Before we dive into that, though, I want you to go ahead and, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel. We definitely love to get new subscribers. If you like this type of content, please go ahead and hit that like button and hit the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you every time we post a new video. We do post here traditionally once a week, but man, it's getting to be more and more frequent now with so many rapidly changing developments as it relates to your money. All right. So if you're watching this video, it's probably because you applied for the economic injury disaster loan known as the EIDL loan, that you were supposed to receive a $10,000 grant within 3 days. And it's been more than 3 days, yet you haven't received your grant. And you're like, what's going on? Well, you're in good company. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, by the time you watch this video, of people have applied for that grant, including yours truly. And to date, nobody's received $10,000. No one's gotten 10 grand from the SBA. Well, why? Was it one big April Fool's joke? Did we all get played by the administration? Is Ashton Kutcher about to jump out and tell us all that we've been punked? Well, it's none of those things. Unfortunately, it's a little bit worse than that. It seems that the SBA, it has to do with the SBA and their interpretation of the CARES Act, which is the massive stimulus bill that was passed by Congress and signed by the president just recently, right? This is all brand new and it's rapidly moving and things are changing and moving around every single day. But apparently the SBA and their administrator have a different interpretation of the way this whole thing is supposed to play out than Congress and the president did, apparently, according to the legislation. So to understand what I'm saying, let's take a look at the CARES Act itself. If we begin on page 66, and I've got my copy here, I'm going to post a link to it in the description below. We might even throw it up here on the screen. But if we begin with page 66 of the actual legislation, you'll find section 1110, which is entitled Emergency EIDL Grants, emergency EIDL grants. It says it right here in the statute, right? The language is pretty clear, and it defines, I'm going to read it right here from the statute. It defines an eligible entity as a business with fewer than 500 employees or an individual that operates as a sole proprietor or independent contractor. Right? So that's pretty clear right there in terms of what it's saying and who it's saying is eligible for these $10,000 grants, right? I'm going to go on and because the statute continues on. Again, if we look down, I'm now on page 68 of the statute, the subsection E entitled Emergency Grant, and it begins with, in general, during the covered period, an entity included for eligibility in subsection B, including small business concerns, skip down a little bit, that applies for a loan under SBA Section 7B2 of the Small Business Act, and it lists the proper legal citation of the act, which is 15 USC 636B2. In response to COVID-19, may request that the administrator provide an advance that is subject to paragraph 3 in the amount requested by such applicant within 3 days after the administrator receives the application from such applicant. Okay, now therein lies the problem, right? So the language of the statute actually says that you can request that you receive your grant in advance. When you apply for the loan, you can receive your grant in advance of the loan proceeds being distributed. The problem is that the SBA apparently interprets this to mean that you can request to receive the grant and up to $10,000, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to give it to you, again, according to their interpretation. Now, this sounds to me like a bunch of shenanigans. It sounds like they're playing games, right? at a time when the American families, when Americans are hurting, businesses are hurting, people desperately need cash to keep their businesses afloat. And apparently it sounds that way to many leaders of the United States Senate and the members of Congress who actually passed the bill. Because just yesterday, we had several of the leading senators down in Washington sent a letter over to the SBA administrator, and I'm going to post a link to this particular letter that I'm going to read from down in the description below. But it says, "Dear Administrator Carranza," I think is how you pronounce the SBA administrator's name. It says, and I quote, "So many of our small businesses operate at close margins and have limited ability to absorb the kind of significant hit to revenues that this pandemic has caused. As we conveyed, and as we know you understood, a swift implementation is required for the small business assistance Congress included in the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, the CARES Act." It goes on to say in a section called Implementation Timeline, right? It's still reading from the same letter here. It says, "So many small businesses and nonprofits have weeks, if not days, before they go under. We need swift implementation of the various SBA programs in the legislation," right? It says that the CARES Act includes a requirement that a $10,000 grant be awarded within 3 days of the application to the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program to help cover operating expenses while waiting for the loan processing. Are SBA staff prepared to fulfill this requirement? Right? Now, it doesn't say request. It says requirement, right? That means they are required to do this according to the legislation. I mean, just read it. It says right there. And that apparently is the same interpretation that members of the United States Senate had. And I would think they would know because they passed the bill, right? And they sent it over to the president and he signed it. So this is, in fact, the law, right? The SBA administrator is required to process and distribute these grant requests when an individual submits them, right? When an individual small business submits them. So what are we going to do about this, right? What can you do to help ensure that things happen the way they are supposed to according to the law? Well, I don't know. You can call the SBA, I guess, and make sure when you do, you can reference the letter of April 2nd, which was signed actually by Charles Schumer, Ben Cardin, Christopher Coons, and Bernie Sanders, all senators, United States Senate. You can reference the letter wherein it says that the SBA administrator is required to distribute the grant money. You can call your representative in Congress or maybe even your senator. If you don't know who your congressman or your senator is, I'll put a link in the description below so that you can go right online and figure out who your representative in Congress is. But we got to do something, right? As it says in the letter, small businesses are hurting. The money has been allocated there, and the SBA is required to distribute it according to the statute. So that's about all I got for you today, guys. It seems to be very clear that they are supposed to distribute the money. The statute does quite clearly call it a grant, and it even says, even if you are not approved for the loan or elect not to take the loan, you are not required to repay the grant. That's pretty clear, right? It says it right in the CARES Act. All right, guys. So that's all I have for today. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Please also follow us on follow Legacy Tax at Facebook, and you can follow me, Ice Cold Tax Pro, on Instagram. We do post content there as well. All right, talk to you later. Bye-bye.